Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So, Jared Anderson's victory on the weekend over Marius Kollias has drawn a lot of criticism from fans. Some people are going as far as saying that they think Jared Anderson is finished. They're saying that he looks slow, disinterested. They didn't like the way he was complaining all the time in the corner, rather than just listening to his corner instructions and implementing what they told him during the rounds. Well, here's my take on the whole thing. I think that most, if not all, of the criticisms of Jared Anderson's performance are valid. But at the same time, there were positives to be taken from his performance, which people are not talking about. I like to talk about the good that a fighter has done in a contest, particularly if there are improvements over his previous fights. And there were improvements here, technical improvements that Jared Anderson clearly had made compared to the Anderson from the Bacoli fight and before. So let's start off with the positives. Whenever a fighter gets knocked out for the first time, and Anderson got knocked out brutally, dropped multiple times and knocked out badly, many fighters get spooked by experiences like that. And when they come back, even if it's against low-level opposition, they're gun shy. They're scared to let their hands go because they fear getting clipped. There was no evidence of that here with Jared Anderson. He was offensive. He was still willing to take chances, as in throwing shots, which always leaves you susceptible to counters. It's how you deal with what's coming back that's important from a defensive perspective. But Anderson was willing to put himself in those positions. Not that Kollias is a massive puncher, but Anderson doesn't have an amazing chin. Yet he was still confident enough to let his shots go. Then we've got the fact that with his new trainer, he's finally conceded the fact that the lean back he's been doing for years had to go, because Anderson would plant his feet, and then when a fighter's coming at him throwing shots, he would simply lean his upper body back with his feet in the same position. In the Charles Martin fight in particular, that move was exposed as being terribly reckless. And when he'd do that lean back, he'd do it with his hands down most of the time. And he was getting punished for it again and again and again against Charles Martin, and punished for it even more, of course, against Martin Bacoli. Clearly, with his new trainer, he's conceded, as I say, that that is not the move to be making. And so in this fight against Kollias, rather than leaning back, he was tending to duck underneath shots more, step off to the side, keeping his hands up. Now, there were occasions in the fight where the lean back started to creep in a little bit, but that's to be expected. When you've been doing something for so many years, it's very hard to iron it out, to get rid of it in just one or two fights. It's going to take time to drop that bad habit. But for the most part, his defense was better in this fight than I've seen it in the past. From a technical perspective, the stuff he was doing, again, rolling underneath shots rather than leaning back, stepping off to the side, coming out the pocket at angles, keeping his hands up more. And here's the thing, when you are making such a dramatic adjustment to what you've been doing, you're having to reprogram your brain. During a fight, you're actually having to fight your previous programming. And a fight is a high-stress situation where it's easy to revert back to type, revert back to what you've been doing in the past. And what I'm telling you is, it's actually mentally draining when you're trying to reprogram your brain like that to do things differently. And that can affect how much energy you have in the fight. Over time, when you get more comfortable with the new technique, you'll be more relaxed with it, you'll be more comfortable with it, and it will no longer be draining for you. It'll be second nature. Now, Jared Anderson early on in this fight told his corner that he didn't want to go the distance, but he was concerned that the guy was tough and it may go 10. Well, you know what? For Jared Anderson's development, working with this new coach, going 10 rounds is the best thing that could have happened to him. How could he have worked on all these things and tested his new technique if he'd blown the guy out in a round? He couldn't have done. He needed the rounds in order to make those technical adjustments against an opponent who wasn't that dangerous. Now, sure, if he blasted the guy out in a round, it would have been good for his confidence, and maybe he should have some fights like that. But we're dealing with a guy who is very young, so we don't need to rush his rebuilding process. They can take their time with it. Sure, get his confidence back with some blowouts, but if you're going to correct the technical errors that have been there for years with Anderson, you're going to need fights like this against tough opponents like Kollias, who are not that dangerous offensively, but they're going to stick around and be stubborn and allow you to work on things, allow you to tighten things up. So those are the positives I take from the fight. Now let's talk about the negatives. First of all, Jared Anderson came in at a career heaviest 256 pounds. Now he carries the weight very well, I have to say, because he's got big legs and not necessarily a slim upper body, but his upper body is not bulky at all. He's got the upper body of like a cruiserweight or even a light heavyweight. He doesn't have a typical heavyweight upper body, so he can still maintain that fluidity in his punches and what have you. But I remember Jared Anderson years ago in an interview saying that he doesn't like to be out of the gym for any more than, I think he said, a week or two, because he notices that his fitness and sharpness deteriorate very quickly. And because of that, he likes to stay in the gym all the time. But of course, he's also said that he's only in boxing for money. He doesn't care about becoming world champion or anything like that. To him, boxing is a smash and grab. He sees it as a job. He doesn't particularly enjoy it. These are things he said in the past. And so he was paid a lot of money for the Martin Bakole fight, apparently. And he got destroyed. I mean, he put up a brave effort, but ultimately he got destroyed. And perhaps that caused him to take some time away from the gym. I mean, it was a knockout defeat, so he wouldn't have been able to spar for a while, presumably. But maybe he just wasn't in the gym like that at all. And perhaps that's why he came in heavier for this fight. Perhaps that's why there was deterioration. With that being said, 256 being his career heaviest, it's only 4 pounds heavier than he was against Martin Bakole, so it's not really much. But you don't know whether he's been coming down from a higher weight, you know? He certainly didn't fight with the intensity in this bout that we're used to seeing from him, because Anderson normally fights with tremendous intensity. Go look at the Jerry Forrest fight, for example, to see what I'm talking about. Jerry Forrest is a guy who took Zheli Zhang the full distance and nearly stopped him. Anderson just walked straight through Jerry Forrest, punched him to bits in like 2 rounds. But we didn't see that kind of fire here. Again, maybe part of it was down to the change in technique. It can drain you during a fight when you're fighting your own previous programming. You're fighting your bad habits, you know? That could be part of it, but again, another part of it is the fallout from the Martin Bakole fight, the psychological fallout. Because here we have a guy who, by his own admission, was never in love with boxing in the first place. So once something like that happens to you, either it ignites a fire or it extinguishes it. And then we have the conversations between Anderson and his coach in the corner. He's no longer with Sugar Hill. As far as I'm aware, he's got this new coach. He's a young guy. I wasn't so much concerned about Anderson's back and forth with his coach as I was with Anderson's demeanor in the corner. It's not so much the things he was saying, it's the way he was saying them and just the way he looked. I agree with what other people said about Anderson. He looked disinterested, looked like he didn't want to be there, particularly in the corner. Jared Anderson has given us several red flags, even before the Martin Bakole fight, with the way he's been talking about boxing, the stuff he's been involved in outside the ring, brushes with the law, and so on. He's clearly emotionally immature, 25 years of age, but he might really be 17 or 16 or 15 mentally and emotionally. His alias is very fitting, Big Baby, because that's what he's like a big baby. He's not a man yet, emotionally. He recently became a father, and I was hoping that would help to mature him. But based on what I saw in this fight, it hasn't yet. You know, I wonder what kind of people Jared Anderson is around. Because as the saying goes, show me a man's friends, and I'll tell you who he is. The type of friends that you have can influence the way that you think and behave, particularly when you're young and impressionable like Jared Anderson. I think he may benefit from being around more mature people, more hardened people, more serious people. But is he willing to put himself in that environment? As another saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Now, Anderson has gone as far as finally conceding that his lean back was disastrously reckless. And he was very stubborn on that for a long time, but he's eventually, finally, thankfully, decided to drop it, decided to listen to wiser heads on that. Will he go one step further and change the people that he's associating with and hanging around? Because unless this young man grows up fast, then like others are saying, he probably has no future in boxing. And it would be a shame because he does have talent. The talent is clearly there. But as we've seen over the years so many times, you can have all the talent in the world. If your mind ain't right, you're not going to make it. Can he get his mind right? I don't know. If he somehow manages to, and he does have time on his side to a certain extent, right? 25 years of age. But the mind is typically a more difficult thing to fix than the body or technique. It can take longer to fix the mind. It will typically take longer. So in that sense, he needs to get a move on. He has to make certain decisions to move in a particular direction. He has to recognize the flaws in his character that we all see. If he doesn't recognize those things as flaws, then yeah, he's doomed as a fighter. But personally, I hope he does figure it out because, as I say, he's got a lot of ability. When he's on form, he's very exciting, got an entertaining style. I think he'd be a great addition to the heavyweight division at world level when he's firing on all cylinders. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts on Jared Anderson in this performance against Marius Kollias? Give me your assessment. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm out. Are you surrounded by mindless bots in human form who adhere to the norm and blindly conform? Who swallow all the mainstream BS and actually ridicule you for questioning things? Do you wish you had more free-thinking individuals in your life to network and converse with? Well, look no further. We're right here. Come and join the Brotherhood of Reason on Patreon. You'll gain access to my weekly topical content where we take deep dives on an endless variety of subjects, as well as my vast back catalogue of podcasts, videos, interviews, movie decodings, and my Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You'll also get to talk and network with myself and hundreds of other people in our members chat. You can enjoy all this via the Patreon app or on desktop and download all my podcasts in high-quality MP3. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store, or simply visit patreon.com on a web browser. Then head on over to my page and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. All the links are in the description box below. And just a quick money-saving tip for Apple users. If you purchase your Patreon subscription on the desktop site or on Android, then you'll avoid the ridiculous 30% fee that Apple charges for purchases made on the iOS app. So if you're on iPhone or iPad, save yourself some money by buying your subscription on the actual Patreon website or on Android because it's a lot cheaper. Once you've made that initial purchase, you can then use the Patreon app on your iPhone or iPad thereafter to access and enjoy your content as normal.